Ladies and gentlemen, in the last decade, digital marketing has been a huge success, with worldwide digital marketing expenditure expected to reach around 300 billion US dollars by the end of 2021. The question here is, how can corporations utilize the emerging tech trends during their digitalization? The panelists across APEC will dive deep into this matter, and please join me in welcoming our panelists and moderator from Hakuhodo Digital Vietnam, Insider, Afro, and Haravan.
Okay, guys, good afternoon. Welcome to this panel. My name is EJ from Hakuhodo Digital Vietnam, and we want to welcome you in the day 2 of the MMA Impact Vietnam virtual event. So, as we know, the line between technology and marketing is increasingly blurring, and marketers from both clients and agencies are facing a new reality wherein technological decisions need to be made in order for business and marketing objectives to be achieved. And we're fortunate today to be in the presence of 3 distinguished panelists who sit right in that intersection of marketing and technology. And today they were gracious enough to share their thoughts and insights about this very important topic. So allow me to introduce our panelists for today, starting with Jack Nguyen, Regional Managing Director of Southeast Asia for Insider, Mr. Ankit Rawal, Senior Director for Sales and Marketing for AFL, and Mr. Nguyen Viet Phong, Head of Omnichannel Product for Haravan. How are you guys? Good afternoon.
Hey, EJ.
Hey, good afternoon, EJ.
Right. We have a lot of things to discuss, so I guess we'll get right to it. No. So first question is to Ankit. Given your exposure in India or in other regional markets, how would you characterize the Vietnam market in terms of its adoption of marketing technologies relative to or in comparison with its regional peers? And what do you think Vietnamese marketers can learn from the region in terms of this adoption?
Thanks, EJ. I think what is very clear across the board, whether it is in Vietnam, the ASEAN region, or worldwide, that how COVID has really accelerated the digital transformation, right? And reminds me of a favorite quote I read some time back, that there are weeks when nothing happens and there are decades which happens in weeks. And that's what COVID has really done, right? And we've seen this with the explosion of companies, whether it is in the fintech space, right? So obviously there was a Momo and Zalo Pay, but Cake, for example, have come up. There are these trading platforms like Infina, education tech companies, whether it is Kyan Guru, whether it is Elsa, iCanKit from Galaxy Edu, Topica, and similarly in health tech. So some of these businesses never existed pre-COVID, and now during COVID, this has happened. One of the other things I'm also learning from my team and partners, because we do a lot of work in Vietnam, is that government really is working hard to see how do we produce many more unicorns in Vietnam. In fact, if I'm not wrong, my team was sharing that they've got a plan to get 10 unicorns by 2030. The Ministry of Planning and Investment is very trying to get as many companies to adopt the Industry 4.0, right? Because Vietnam is a manufacturing hub. Or similarly improve its ranking in the Global Innovation Index. I think it stands in 42 and it wants to be in top 30 in the next few years. So that is very exciting times for Vietnam, and we as an organization which is headquartered in Singapore but do a lot of business in Vietnam in the larger ASEAN region is very bullish about the country and investing a lot in terms of people and technologies, etc. I think one technology which is impacting all businesses, coming to the question you asked, EJ, is obviously AI and machine learning, right? And these are really impacting every spheres of business. And I think one example I want to share where I recently learned through one of our partners, Elsa, which is an education tech. And Elsa is not the Disney character. I have a 5-year-old daughter who loves it, but it's actually the acronym for English Language Speech Assistant. And we all know that how English today is a passport of success across Vietnam, across some of the other ASEAN or other emerging markets, even here in India. And access to a good English coach has always been very expensive. It is becoming very difficult, and you have to pay a lot of money to get like few hours of an English coach. But what Elsa is doing is they're leveraging the technology around machine learning, particularly supervised learning, to really democratize it. And for a few, I think what last I know, it's around $45 a year, you can get access to a world-established speech coach, which was not possible before. So I think some of these technologies around machine learning as well as AI is really leveraged by companies and startups in Vietnam. Elsa, case in point. The other part of the question which you asked, like what are some of these technologies which some of the other marketers across the ASEAN region are using and doing it? I think they're really taking machine learning to a different level in terms of digital marketing campaigns. So whether it is discovering new customer segments, is it doing personalized recommendations and campaign optimization, or even channel optimization, which is whether to target a user through social media or say first party data or own media, is where I see some of the ways some of these startups are doing it. Let me give you 3 concrete examples of what I mentioned, right? So let's take Grab, the whole ride hailing, now food delivery, as well as fintech company in the headquartered in Singapore. They are really using machine learning to stumble upon newer segments. Typically, if you think in the traditional marketing ways, right, we would do our segmentation around age, gender, or maybe around demography. But they are able to do very interesting customer segmentation on things like app usage, transactional data. And interestingly, Grab has multiple business lines, right? They have their ride hailing, the food delivery, as well as say now financial services, and they are using machine learning to get one single view of the customer across this business unit and create very new segments. And I think this is one thing I have not seen so much being utilized even by the big e-commerce giants in Vietnam. The other thing, since I mentioned e-commerce, is Zalora, which is again a fashion app headquartered in Singapore, and they are using again personalized recommendation, which is kind of an unsupervised learning methodology of the AI, which is to upsell and cross-sell new products, right? So think of how we say people who bought this also bought that. Zalora is really taking it to the next level where they're trying to come up with very interesting segments, at the same time give certain offers. So say, for example, a user added something in the cart, but did not went ahead and purchase. The AI engine can quickly tell them and do a certain recommendation, either price discount or knowing their past behavior, certain services, which will nudge them to go ahead and close the transaction. So again, Zalora is using personalized recommendations very well. And on the last part, very quickly, I just want to talk about the channel orchestration, which is when I have to engage with the user, should I use it on social media or on own media or say display? And I know, I'm sure John will talk about it, but typically it has always been a waterfall where you will first try with your own media, then you will move to social media, and then you will move to display. But like example, again, Zivame, which is a big lingerie brand here in India and one of our customers, really are using machine learning algorithms to do this channel orchestration very well. So say, for example, a user A, say, let me call her, say, Mary, she engages more on her Instagram. So when I have to engage, I will use Instagram as the first page, versus say Sophia, she is more active on YouTube, and maybe we'll show the ad first on YouTube. And then there is someone who's more open to send, get emails or get a push notification. So each user, you are able to orchestrate a whole journey from awareness to actual sale to different channels. And again, talking about scale, right? We're trying to target hundreds and thousands of such customers. Again, it is not rule-based, it is all machine learning ways. So I think these are some of the ways where companies are really using AI and machine learning to a next level, whether it is discovering new customer segments, personalized recommendations, or even channel optimization, which I feel a lot of marketers in Vietnam can utilize.
So that's great, man. And I think it's interesting you mentioned AI and machine learning. So obviously, like when you talk about emerging technologies, these would be in the forefront of it. But you know, for a lot of marketers still, you know, when the mention of those words, AI, machine learning, all of these things can seem to be intimidating, even daunting, right? And it's not immediately obvious what is the practicality or the connect or what's in it for them. So I'm curious, like from you, Jack, like in your experience in talking with Vietnamese marketers, what do you think is the biggest barriers in terms of adopting this technological-led marketing solutions or technology?
Thanks, EJ, and thanks, Ankit, for a great sharing at the beginning. A lot of part that I share will be quite relevant to that too. So I think we are very lucky to be at the center of almost 100 of enterprise clients in Vietnam. To see the transformation back in 2017 when I'm heading back to Vietnam and start really try to empower the business in Vietnam to adopt technology. It is a very tough quest because it's very early and there is a lot of unknown, right, in business to invest. So we have been through that in the past 5 years. So you can see it all the way from the retailer that we all know in Vietnam, like FPT Shop or VinFast, VinPearl, Key Plaza, Xiaofones, you name it. So those are the ones that we have been dealing with on a daily basis, all the way to the new trend recently, like what Ankit say, right? During COVID, all of the banks, they are transforming. So VP Bank, MB Bank, they're the top one who leading the face as well. And you might think that the older traditional industry like airlines, right, or telco, they might transform a bit late, but the answer is actually no. So Vietnam Airlines, Bamboo has always been our clients for the past almost 3 years. So a lot of this change and adoption has been happening. It just not is being shared outside of the world. So what I have seen is there is a five key observation I see, right? So number one is that the first barriers is actually not about technology. It's about the transformation mindset from the top management. And what exactly does it mean is that many of the business these days, they are still very product-led focused company. So I'm manufacturing these products and you got to buy it from me, right? I don't care who you are, etc. And the business who are more customer-centric, who are taking a more human-to-human approach, then they normally stand out from the crowd. So think about Tezazidong, like Mobile World, for example, or think about Tiki, right? They own pride and the customers vote them the best for their customer services. So that is one of the different mindset. Are you customer focused? Or are you product focused? The second one is that many of them still adopt the same mindset of the old way of growing. For example, if you have a 50 offline store, if you want to double your revenue, right? The easiest way is you open 2 times more store. If the next year you want to make your investor happy, right? You're just gonna triple the store. But those are not the sustainable growth because your market size kind of shrinking, right? So the point is that how can you make one of your customers become loyal and they keep buying from you? And that's the point where you can really break even from the marketing spend that you burn in the first place. But a lot of the CEO or the C-level, they are still very traditional, right? It has been like a long way for them to go until this point. And it's hard for them to adopt these new kind of mindset changes that require a lot of technology investment. That's the scary part. Now, assuming, let's say 10 of them, right? 5 of them decided that, okay, I'm going to change my mindset. Now I'm going to invest in technology. They come to the second challenge is that it become like a technology buffet. You know, you go to Google, you say, oh, I want to do this and that. And they see like 1,000 of technology. And joke aside, if you Google marketing technology, you got the map of 5,000 technology.
Yes.
No joke. So they're going to be confused. And most of that lead to a problem because I worked from Zalora before, Ankit. So I was the one who's sourcing the technology for Rocket Internet. So I personally vet through all the technology myself. And the challenge is that there is a term in technology investment, they call it technical debt, meaning that if you don't have a long-term view of the investment in technology, you will likely buy A, B, C, and D today without knowing the consequences in 3 years from now. And then in 3 years, you say, oh, I want to combine, I want to change because this is my new plan. Then unfortunately, whatever A, B, and C you do, you got to break it and you got to start again from scratch. So that's why it created a new trend of the role of CIO, CTO, or digital transformation is very important because they are the one going to define the next 3 years of technology investment. Without that, brand just going to buy without knowing what they need to buy next, or they buy the same similar thing without knowing, you know. So that is the second challenges. And third one, out of the 5, right? So let's say you have 2 that they get to the stage where they, okay, I'm going to buy the solution, and this is a solution I'm going to buy. Then normally what we see after working with 100 brands is that first, their team, right? They are lack of the best practices. They don't know how to start. Okay, I have a technology, but it's like a blank paper. So step by step, where do I start? And then from the boss, right? The boss gonna say, hey man, I already invest like 1 billion or 2 billion Vietnam dong in this technology. So what do you get back for me? And then they don't see anything. So they start losing the trust. So we have a concept called the time to life, meaning that how much time does it take for insider, for example, to get the clients to go live with the technology? because long gone the day where you say, oh, I'm going to take 3 months, I'm going to take 6 months to see something. Brand doesn't have this time this day because COVID hit them hard. They don't have enough money. So it better be like 1 month or even like 2 weeks. So that's why we got to make it so fast. For insiders, take like 2 weeks for you to really go live with something like automations, personalization, etc. The fourth point is the challenges of technology ownership, because many of the time they buy the technology, right? And then let's say there is a 10 feature and then they think it's very sexy when they buy, but in reality, they only use 2. And then the boss similar going to ask, hey, I pay you for an iPhone price and now you're using it like a Nokia. Like, then why should I invest like that at the beginning, right? So it comes from the partners, the technology partners. Do you really invest in your partners to train them, to make them adopt it? So for example, the insider, right? We track the usages of each of the client. If they don't really use it, we're going to make sure we are like a teacher, right? Like, hey, you're a best student. You got to use it. Use it until the point of you break the platform, you know? And last point is like Ankit, what he's sharing is that there is a lack of resources because during COVID, company need to let go people, right? So they're not going to have a big team, but they need to produce output for their business. So how can they adopt something that can lessen their time spent? So that's when the role of AI and machine learning comes in. So actually one of our aim is to decentralize those complicated terms so that even company, when they have one person doing marketing, like one IT person, they can also do AI machine learning. If you need like a 10 team member, 15 team member doing data engineer, data science, then it's going to cost you like a lot of money, right? Before you can get it. So that's why we produce like the recommendation engine, the machine learning for the audience, like what Anki shared, so that any retailer, they can just go live between 2 weeks and they can really get the technology live on their platform. Recommendation engine, you name it, like predict if you're going to buy, if you don't buy, if you're going to churn, what kind of color you like, etc. Brand have that in their fingertip. There's no need for like complicated machine learning. So that's for me the 5 biggest areas of adoption, if you ask me. Yeah.
That's a very well summarized set of insights. No, I think you fully encapsulated like the barriers like for each stage. Um, you mentioned something about like the diversity of choice. Like it's like 5,000 martech platforms in the world. Like how do you even begin? Now, during like COVID and like post-COVID, one of the things that sort of like drove marketers to like really explore technology is like the need to pivot or to invest in e-commerce. So for Fung, my curiosity is like you've spoken to a lot of e-commerce marketers in brands in Vietnam about e-commerce, and you've helped them from the very beginning. So I'm curious, what advice do you give in terms of like where do they begin? Like how do you even start?
Yeah. There's a lot of things around it, but the first thing I usually say to Haravan customer is like you need to start now, and you need to start very lean. So don't look at the like case studies like and try to do everything because it has to happen a long time with a very big team. So you need to have something to get on very fast and then improve iteratively from it. And there are 2 ways. Usually there are 2 ways to 2 stacks to go online. The first one is it depends on your product and channel strategy. So if your product is like kind of commodities, you can go to the online marketplace and you can go for pricing strategy. And the pros is you have the very high traffic, so you can test your pricing. So the product is not a concern, the traffic is not a concern, and then you just testing the traffic. The second one, the second stack is social media plus the branded website. So this is where things get interesting because you build a brand, you build a long-term brand, you build a very not high margin, but like differentiated margin, differentiated product, and you own your channel, you own your customer. So this is where the offline brands tend to go into. But But to set up and launch a website and set up all the media channel, they need to have a lot of like research and work to set all things up. So there are platforms to help them like all in one, so they can just plug in and like plug and play, and they can turn on the payment service, they can turn on the logistics fulfillment service, they can turn on the media service, and they can turn on like Facebook Messenger and Zalo Messenger, and they ready to go in like 2 days. So that there are two ways. So the first thing is to define your channel and your place channel strategy and your pricing strategy. And the second one, they need to invest early in the relationship with the customer, because traditionally people think the channel is where we push our product to the customer. But when we think again, and this is the channel is where the loyalty happens, right? So your channel is not only the place to sell, but also the place to communicate and keep the relationship with customer. And you don't want to give it to like to third party that you cannot control. You need to control. So that's why you need to for like large, medium and large enterprise, you need to come up with the customer data platform, CDP, or the customer engagement platform such as Insider here. But for SMB, you can utilize the tools that Haravan create to enable in an easy way. And thirdly, because the brands all already have the offline presence, and now they go to online, so they need to be consistent, right? You cannot sell something for the price X on offline, and then to go to online, you discount it to the price Y, and then customer will see that inconsistency. So you have to be consistent in your communication, in your pricing, and also you need to pay attention in analytics. For example, there are three things for marketing. It's about the channel, about the product, and about the customer. So there are three dimensions that you need to get the data centralized in one place, make the insight from it, and then action from it. So yeah, so there's a lot of tools in the martech segment can help you to do that automatically with the help of AI. But if you cannot afford it, you have to pay attention to get all the data pipeline ready for the first place. Yeah, so it's like a long-term investment. But we can start very lean at the first place, so we can get the traffic, but think long-term. Yeah.
I think you mentioned
Yes,
something.
allow me 1 minute. I just wanted to add one thing here. So
Go
again,
ahead.
I think, and again, I'm coming from a regional view because I've seen this as marketers, as technologies, you get enamored with a new technology, whether it is AI, machine learning, crypto, or say Internet of Things. But I think what is important is that don't consider each of this as the new electricity and look for that problem in your domain as the nail you want to keep hammering. You have to really do a lot of self-reflection, understand where you are in your technology journey, what is the organizational structure, do you have the internal teams who are ready to do it, maybe do a small pilot, as I think Jack was mentioning, have the right set of people, and that mindset is very, very important. So whenever you're trying to adopt any new tool or technology, more than outside audit, you also need to do an internal audit in terms of people, processes, and your evolution, where you want to adapt any of those things. Don't get enamored by this is the new electricity and everything, every problem you're trying to hit the nail with that particular tech. I think that realization, and many times a lot of organizations I've seen in the region fall into that fallacy, and then they blame the technology rather than blaming the internal process and the people. So someone as a brand sponsor who understands both internal as external technology is very important to drive any kind of these long-term valuable changes.
I think you know, all three of you mentioned the word mindset, right? So for Fong, he mentioned, like, you have to start now. So it's like a mindset shift. Ankit and also Jack also mentioned about mindset. And I think, like, I want to go back to that aspect because I think that is sort of like the genesis of like any successful transformation initiative, right? The mindset. And so my question is, like, how do you sort of, in your experience, how do you deploy the right mindset? What's how do you break that, wrong mindset and allow them to sort of like be in the right mindset, right? Because people will be in different mindsets, and in order for them to be your clients, you have to be able to move them to this right mindset and see things a certain way. So, like, what are your experiences in those? Like, how do you change their mindsets? Anyone want to answer that?
I can take the first part. So
Mhm.
what we normally see is that I'm sure you guys are familiar with the bell curve, right? It's like
Mhm.
that. And then it applies for any kind of new technology or even iPhone. That when there is an iPhone 13 launch, right? Even though there is nothing changed technically in the phone, but you still see like a top 10% of the most iPhone lover, right? They still make the queue in the lines to make the
Mhm.
purchase. So for technology, the same way. So there's only the top 10%. They are the most innovative, and normally they are the top organization anyway in retails, in airlines, in telco. So those one, they will always make the changes and drive the industry forward in terms of adopting Haravan, Insider, whatever. So they're going to be the one going first. So the key is that for the lagger, the rest of it, then first you need to package those successful cases and make sure that you break it down into the patterns and the step by step, so that the others, they are motivated to make the changes. Because there's always a three-step, right? That why change, like why now, and then why using Insider or Haravan. That's the latest step. That's the easy step. But the two tough part is why change and why change now, right? So for why change, then they should be motivated by similar competitors in a way in the industry to change. And that's how the top C-level, they normally look at things, right? And the second is that, like a consultant they normally do, is we need to quantify the impact of the changes. Okay, I think I was going to take risks, but then how much is the investment cost, and how much I'm going to get back in return, right? So we owe them the way to quantify the impact that of their current problems. So if you say that I'm losing my customers, then how much am I losing? And then if I don't do it, or I don't do the change right now, then how much I want to keep losing. And right now, it is not very visible for them to see it. We cannot blame it on them, because what I realized, because I was consultant in digital analytics before. So what is hard is that Vietnamese people, we say that we are a very data-driven nation, right? But technically, I don't think it's the case, because if you're super data-driven, then you should not leak too many data of you, right? As a customers out, so that everybody can just buying or selling these days, etc. So as a cultural, it's not a fully data-driven mindset cultural. So we need to make it happen for them. You need to calculate for them and make it visible to the C-level. We're going to make the change. And the third thing is you got to involve them in the change. This is what I see most of the company don't do enough, meaning that if you give them a platform, it's easy, but they know their business better than you. Like there's no way I know about airlines better than Vietnam Airlines. So they are the one who actually know how to adopt that into their business. So this is not a one-way street that you can say, hey, buy me, buy me, buy me, right? And just change. You got to shake hand with them and let's say, hey, let's sit down and draw how we can bundle with your knowledge of your business and your own pain point and come out with the roadmap for changes. And then they're going to internalize, oh, this is how we're going to make the changes. Then they're going to be confident. So from my 5-year experience, this is how I think people can change. But it's not easy. It's a long road. Yeah.
I think you mentioned something interesting, right? And you mentioned about being, involving every stakeholder in the change process or in the transformation process. No, so in terms of like that, like my question to Fong is that the other players in this landscape would be like the brand agencies and the creative agencies, which you've probably worked with some of them, with some of the clients now. How do you see, like, from your perspective, their roles evolving during this time where technology is more felt and more relevant in decision making? So how do you see, like, the role or the nature of brand and creative agencies evolve during this time?
Yeah, I think in such a very difficult economic situation, brand and creative agency is less about the I think it's there are less client less concerned about the awareness of things, but more concerned about conversion.
Hmm.
So that's where the creative and brand agency need to be more like on the strategy side, and how to leverage the brand conversion across different channels. So it's more strategy side than like create a very great creative and then hope to raise the like share of voice or awareness like before. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So for my next question, maybe Ankit can answer this. In your experience, so you've worked with a lot of markets, right? And each market or each government will have very unique local regulations when it comes to data and collection and market and usage, right? And since marketing technologies obviously utilize data, how do you think those local regulations affect the strategy or the deployment of the marketing technologies available?
Isn't it the elephant in the room, right? Because if you see every country, right, whether it is here in India or GDPR, which has been around in Europe, or even recently Korea has come up with very stringent guidelines. So I think, and in general, right, there is a whole awareness for consumers on about their privacy and what data they are sharing with the organization. There's a very famous Apple ad which has been going around the last couple of months, where he made the advertisement says that how different tech is following. And this really, if you think, right, like makes the life of a marketer very difficult. How do you draw the line between contextual versus creepy? Because for the marketer, right, I'm trying to personalize my offerings, make it relevant for you. But at the same time, when you do that fine balance between what is contextual versus what is creepy, and again, the jury is out for how different marketers or different technologies are trying to solve for it. But let me give you 2 or 3 examples of how what people are doing globally as well as in the region. I think the first is real investment in first party data. So all these targeting companies which were there in the ad tech space, martech space, somewhere they crossed the line and they started collecting a lot of data without consent. They did not ask the user they are collecting this data. And now, because the consumer was much more conscious about what and where he shares, marketers really need to build investments on getting first party data, which is build your own assets, whether it is your digital media platforms, your website, your mobile app, and identify by very clear consent that you are collecting this data to provide this benefit, to maybe personalize the experience you have within the app or in the digital ecosystem, and invest a lot in your own media channels rather than relying on Facebook as well as say other social media channels, right? Because at the end of the day, we started leaving that and started just doubling down on Facebook, Google, which happened in the last few years. So really invest in first party data. All the new laws which are coming, irrespective of geography, doesn't do anything around first party data. So that is there to stay. And I think the other, going back to what you said, mindset, right? That mindset of privacy by design. I think when we design systems, when we design automation software, marketing automation software, we never thought about privacy by design, where we seek consent. If there is a use case when the user wants to have a right to forget, we should have built those systems. There is a very clear audit process where someone in the ecosystem can verify that why is this data being collected? Is it being really used for relevant reasons or for nefarious reasons, so that there is a third party control which can play that audit. So some of these privacy by design, right to forget, holding the technology infrastructure to accommodate the new conscious privacy user are very, very important, and always keep communicating, right? I think you never die by over communication. So keep communicating to the consumer that how and why this data is being collected and how it is being used to the benefit of the consumer. I think these are some of the ways some of the brands globally as well as in the region are navigating the new conscious consumer.
Thanks, man. I think, first party data is all the rage right now. Like every brand wants to get it. Like every brand wants to start somewhere. We're almost out of time, but my last question is maybe each of you can sort of like quickly answer this. So obviously there's the marketing technology landscape in Vietnam. So obviously there's factors like language or digital maturity of each company, like that plays into to account. So I'd like to get your thoughts in terms of, from a very Vietnam market standpoint, what makes this landscape unique, and how does that like become either a barrier or an opportunity for the marketing technology industry in general? So anyone wants to start?
I can share a quick one. So the I think for Vietnam, as a Vietnamese, I'm natively Vietnamese anyway. So the first one I think is a challenge, but also opportunity. Is the balance between a mindset of short term and long term. So as I say, most business, they are still very short term. By short term I mean 1 year view, that this is how I can grow. So because of that mindset, many of them ignore or cannot digest or takes in any kind of investment, be it technology or new initiative that will support the long-term view of the 3 and 5 years, that eventually will kill them backwards if they don't do it right now. So this is an opportunity for the one who can step up and do it beforehand. The second is an opportunity is Vietnam covering to Thailand, because I'm also leading Thailand and Taiwan, right? As a nation, Vietnamese people, very curious, hungry, they love playing around with technology, and they're willing to take risks. So they can test out new technology. It's no guarantee they're going to buy it, but in terms of testing, trying it out, I think they're very willing to. So at least I'm very hopeful that as a whole nation, we're going to just proceeding forward very strongly with new technology, as you can see in cryptocurrency, right, and Bitcoin. And the last one is there is also a very strong technical talent pool in Vietnam. So that's why we see a lot of local technology startup that are doing marketing technology, which is great. And the second is that even in-house, there is a big conglomerate that they can even invest in the team that doing this as a in-house power. So all of this serve as a factor to promote the whole technology adoption forward, be it in a good way or bad way, but at least the whole thing push the whole market forward. So I think those are what I see specifically only for Vietnam, that other region doesn't have this.
Well said. Phong?
From my point of view, I agree with Jack. So the consumer in Vietnam, they are very easy to adopt new technology or new way of shopping. So that's we see the market is like the changing is like they increase the demand very fast. So they expect good customer experience. They expect brand to be present in every channel. So for the brands, they need to constantly listen to customer in some way, in data or using the rating or feedback. So they need to look at the data and see what's the new trend, what's the new pattern that they can adapt, or they just if they keep the same way of selling, keep the same way of communication, they will be outdated very soon.
Thanks, man. Ankit?
Yeah, when you're last to speak on a common question, I'm sure whatever I wanted to say I haven't shared, but I'll just share one interesting point is around, I think the manufacturing setup, right? So Vietnam, as you see that whole overall geopolitical situation changing, everybody talking about China +1, and a lot of manufacturing is moving out to Vietnam. I think one where Vietnam can really adopt, and that's where I see the government, the Ministry of Commerce and Planning facilitating, is that Industry 4.0 adoption. And that's quite advanced, which I don't see, for example, in other ASEAN markets like Indonesia or even Thailand, where some of these newer technologies around IoT and machine learning in the manufacturing setup could be really well adopted. And you can then build digital brands. So like, for example, if I zoom out and see in US and China, there are a lot of these D2C brand, direct to customers. You are really upending the traditional FMCG distribution or CPG distribution with coming up brands which are only digital native. And I think that is where Vietnamese, and as Jack and Fu mentioned, that user adoption is much higher. Adoption to these new digital brands will be much higher, leveraging all the new cutting edge technologies. And the government is really supporting you to adopt some of these. I think these are very interesting times that's way for Vietnam as consumers.
Thank you. So very well said. So I guess like to wrap up, thank you for your insights and your thoughts. And I think like if there's one thing that the viewers today can pick up from this session, is that you have to start now, right? You have to begin, and that is the mindset that will succeed in the future. There is no like magical 1 or 2 or 3 platforms that will solve all your problems, or 1 or 2 technologies that will be the magic pill for all your business problems. But it's starting that journey, that transformation of the business with the use of technology, that's more important than actually like figuring out what's the right thing for you right now, because you have to explore. It's a journey, right? It's a dynamic thing. Okay, so once again, thank you very much, Jack, Ankit, and Fung, for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for our viewers for joining. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all the panelists and our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, and now we move to the next session in this afternoon with the topic driving connected intelligence.